Hello and welcome to the Problem Gambling Podcast. I'm Barry Grant, an addiction counselor with Extern Problem Gambling, and my co-host is Claire Dunnigan, expert by lived experience and recovery coach and masters in addiction counseling student, currently soon to be a masters in addiction counselor. And we're doing something we've never done before today, which is a live recording of the podcast with a couple of people who use our app platform in attendance. We're actually recording it within the app platform. How cool is that? And a recording of it will go up on the app as well for posterity. And obviously, it goes out to Spotify and all the other places that people like to listen or watch the podcast. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of questions and comments from the people who are in attendance for this live podcast that we're doing today. We're doing a short season this time because 'tis the season of Christmas coming up, and we thought, yeah, Christmas is a big trigger for a lot of people, right? Not just around gambling, around other addictions, general mental health. So we thought we'd have a look at that. Obviously, our main focus will be on gambling, but the other stuff can impact on the gambling as well. So without further ado, Claire very kindly actually did an outline of what we're going to talk about today to keep us on track, which means mostly keep me on track and prevent me from over waffling. So one of the first things we were going to look at was the emotional landscape of Christmas. I like that, and the common feelings that can fuel gambling urges. So loneliness is a big one. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten on the Stop Gambling app, and also Claire has another program running also on the same app platform called the Reclaim program for the Women's Gambling Support Network, which Claire runs. Some of the feedback we've gotten from people using the app is that loneliness is one of the biggest triggers for a lot of people, and Christmas can be a horribly lonely time for a lot of people. Unfortunately, we look at all the Christmas movies and it's all these lovely, loving families having a rare old time. But that is not the reality for a lot of people, unfortunately. So loneliness can be a big one. Boredom can be a big one. People are off work, or they might be bored for different reasons. Family conflict. So you might
Yeah.
not have the opportunity to be bored, but you could be stuck with your family who you see like once a year, only at Christmas, and all sorts of ructions can kick off there. Grief is a big one for a lot of people because, it could be their first Christmas without a loved one, or subsequent Christmases. And financial pressure is another big one because Christmas is expensive, right, for a lot of people. So loneliness, is that something you've seen coming up, Claire, when working with people?
I think like they all really go very well together. I shouldn't say very well together, but they are all intertwined. And yeah, loneliness, I find, right, that the lack of structure around Christmas, even if I just come from a personal point of view, drives me insane. So like, people will talk about boredom. It's okay when you have like everything's planned for Christmas dinner, you have the present openings, you have all of that. And then once 4 o'clock comes, well, it is for us anyway, 4 or 5 o'clock comes, there's just nothing. And all of that kind of planning and everything you're expecting is done. And then you're left with the rest of the evening where you kind of feel like you should do something because it's Christmas Day, but you don't know what to do. So I think that that can be a difficult time for people. There's also the fact, and I don't know, how many families do this, but a lot of the time there's like Christmas card games, poker games, that kind of thing on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. That's going to be a trigger. You know what I mean? As well for people. And of course, financial pressure. Now, I have to say, I'm proud of myself this year. I got really, really ahead of it, but normally it's a last minute thing. And it's not just coming from the presents you have to buy for people, it is the cost of living this year.
Yeah.
It's just insane. Like trying to keep oil or electricity or whatever it is, it's a real struggle for people. And these are the realities where people are going to be facing. So, you know, I honestly I don't know where to start with some of this, but yeah, like I think the loneliness thing, when you're if it really depends on what stage you're at in your recovery. So like I probably I probably find it a little bit more now than I did kind of years ago when I was more surrounded by people, whereas now my circle is smaller, but it I have it that way on purpose, you know? Um, Plus, you just don't have the normal things in your life that you used, like around Christmas time, you don't have the structure around your life. And that is, for me, a problem. And I would imagine for a lot of people, that's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and even just made me think of something there, like something that comes up every year for people who gamble on sports more so is St. Stephen's Day or Boxing Day, as our friends in the UK would call it, or just the 26th of December if you're somewhere else in the world listening to this. So in Ireland and the UK, it's a massive day of people
Horse
going to the
racing.
pub because they've had to spend one whole day with their actual family and they're escaping to the pub. And the pubs in Ireland are closed on Christmas Day. And there's loads of sport on, usually loads of Premier League soccer, loads of horse racing, and people who wouldn't gamble from one end of the year to the other might do a few bets on St. Stephen's Day, as we call it. So a lot of drink, a lot of sport, a lot of gambling, and a lot of people kind of meeting up with friends that they might not have seen who've been off in other countries or working away from home, or back in their family home for the Christmas. So a lot of catching up with old friends and stuff like that. So for some people, when they're stopping gambling, uh, they're avoiding their usual Stephen's Day kind of Christmas tradition of going to the pub, hanging out with their friends or maybe family members, because it's such a big trigger, and that can feed for some people into the loneliness factor as well. And there is the grieving, because we think of grief usually when a person passes. That's the most common form of grief. But people grieve the good times that they had when they were gambling as well. And St. Stephen's Day for a lot of people in Ireland, or Boxing Day in the UK, it probably would be one of the actual fun days when the gambling is kind of fun and it's social and there's a sociable element to it that kind of papers over the cracks of all the horrible things that are going on around your gambling on all the other days of the year. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that is something I talk about quite a lot with people is that mourning period you have. And I'm not talking about with people, I'm talking about with gambling. And there is a genuine mourning period. You've had this thing in your life that has kept you going, right? And even though it's been probably in a lot of cases completely self-destructive thing in your life, it's been a massive part of you for so long. And then it's your go-to escape when things get hard. And we know that things can get very hard with family over Christmas. Look, no one's perfect. There's a lot of occasions where people are kind of forced to be together that they normally might not be together for, just for the sake of Christmas. So there is that, and we would normally use gambling as an escape or something to distract us from all of that chaos. There's also like you mentioned, going out over Stephen's Day. There's a lot more alcohol consumed over the Christmas period. So that can also lead to a lot more drink fueled arguments, which could be triggers for people as well. So, if you're trying to deal with all of that stuff and you're in early recovery, it's going to present challenges for people because that would have been your go-to thing. So what is your new thing that you use to deal with this? And I do not have the answer to that. It's going to be individual for everyone. But I think that it's important that you make that kind of plan to go, right, if something happens, how am I going to deal with it?
yeah, yeah. And look, that's going to be different things for different people. Like you can't be prescriptive and go for a walk or go for a cold water swim or go to the gym or do 100 push-ups or whatever, or meditate or whatever. Different things work well for different people, and for some people it's about going back to things that worked for you before gambling became a problem. For some people, they've never had a healthy coping mechanism to use in their lives. So it's about trying out lots of different things to see what works for you and what clicks for you in early stage recovery. So it would be great to be able to sit here and say, do this, this, and this, and that'll work for 100% of the people 100% of the time, but it don't work that way, unfortunately. But it is sometimes about going back to things that you know have worked for you in the past, and sometimes you're kind of starting out with a blank slate and going, okay, what do I do here to cope with difficult situations? And yeah, like the alcoholic consumption around Christmas tends to go up for people who consume it. And for a lot of people, that can be a trigger to go back gambling. It certainly decreases your inhibitions and your ability to kind of make clear decisions for sure. We all know that. So I suppose to be careful maybe around the alcohol consumption, especially if you're in early stage recovery.
Yeah, because there's two sides to that, because it's either it becomes your replacement or it becomes, the thing that drives you back to it as
Yeah.
well. Um, I follow a lot of kind of I never really use social media on a personal level, but I do follow a lot of these kind of, stoic philosophy things. And I've seen there's this image and it's kind of split in two, and it's got a person on their phone and their family all in the background, having a good time. And then the below that is that person still on their phone, but that in a picture frame. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's like that was a past event. Those people might be gone now, and here you are still on your phone, which we could use as a gambling example because a lot of people do that nowadays as well. But it really does take you away from what's actually going on around. So, although I don't have any answers for people, what I would say is try and be as present as you can. Do you know what I mean? The phone is it's easy and it's addictive, but it's also it takes you out of reality, and I think that's a big problem for people these days. Especially, at Christmas time, you're going to be looking at all of these perfect images of perfect families that aren't perfect at all, but they're all in your face on your feed. So, I would take that with a pinch of salt because no one is perfect. So don't be like comparing yourself going, oh, well, maybe if I, did this bet, like I might have an extra few quid, could go out New Year's Eve, can dress up all nice. It's not going to solve anything for you.
Yeah, yeah. The phone thing is a whole other ball altogether, but it is, there are useful things that people can do on the phone. They can attend online meetings or they can do, there's lots of great meditation apps. There's loads of cool stuff that's out there on the internet that you can access through your phone. But um, yeah, it's super addictive in and of itself, the smartphone. Like, so it's just trying to balance that. Um, and for people who are living alone, like that's harder, I would think. You're talking about the picture of the person who's there, their family are in the background, they have their head stuck in the phone. That happens a lot. We see that a lot with people that we work with, but there's also people who live alone. And for some of them, the phone is their outlet to the rest of the world and their connection with the rest of the world. So it's trying to find that balance, doing those things, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I was thinking this morning, the Christmas period, like whether GA works for you or not, I would say try and get to a meeting if you can. Having that group support around Christmas is a huge thing. And there are plenty of meetings that aren't, 12-step based as well, depending on what you want. But it could be an absolutely lovely experience if you can get to a meeting. If you can get to one in person, even better. Like that, there is a difference, but just connecting with people, I think over Christmas is a huge thing. I say that, but also make sure that those people are actually going to have a positive impact in your life as well. Christmas is a time of tradition. It's also, you could say tradition, but you could say familiarity. And sometimes familiarity is not a good thing, but we tend to, go back to what's familiar to us. That can be gambling, of course, and it can be the comfort, or we tell ourselves it's the comfort at the time. But it could also be engaging with people who you would have gambled with, and that could be a destructive thing. So being mindful of who you actually surround yourself with at Christmas, huge.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things we're looking at here is those kind of quiet moments. In Sweden, they call them the in-between days of Christmas. Like, I don't know what we call them over here, but it's the days between Christmas and New Year where a lot of people are just off. You're out of your normal routine. You've done the kind of big event thing of Christmas Day, which is actually the day before in Christmas. So you've got an extra day of in-between days in Sweden. And well, you can kind of drift and you can kind of lose track of what actual day of the week it is, and you're out of your, whatever routine you might be in because of work or college, whatever other things that you normally do. And there can be this kind of weird downtime of restlessness, like in the 12-step meetings, they talk about addiction being this feeling of being restless, irritable, and discontent. Now, I've spent a lot of Christmases, especially on the in between days, feeling restless, irritable, and discontent because I like routine. I like kind of doing the same thing every day within reason, which I normally do in fairness. But those days where you're at home, so you're not away on holiday somewhere doing some kind of holiday stuff. You're at home, things are kind of slightly off kilter in terms of when shops are open and maybe you're not working and the kids are off school and all these things. And yeah, that kind of restlessness can kick in. Or is any of that resonating with you, or is that just the inside of my head?
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Lack of structure. I can't deal with. Like, I need
Yeah.
structure. The kids are a good distraction for me, like I have to say. And look, they're just going to be spending 2 weeks playing with all their new things, which is great. But yeah, chaos is the word that comes to mind for me. And again, it's like describing maybe the start of recovery. You have this period, and I have talked about mourning, but you have this period at the very beginning where everything is like relief, and nearly everyone you talk to when they get into recovery from gambling will say, I just feel so relieved, and that'll be because they're not hiding, they're not lying, whatever it is at the start, and they're happy to go, I've gone a week, I've gone a month without gambling. But there will also be this kind of period that follows a lot of the time where you miss the chaos. Um, and quiet days are going to reinforce that a little bit more, I think. So you're running on this kind of adrenaline for so long, keeping your addiction going, and it stops. And then you have to kind of stay in that it stopped period, which we want to say hopefully you can develop a healthy, happy routine. But if you're doing that over the Christmas period, how do you do it? Like what can you do? Because you're out of your normal kilter as well. So I would be mindful of that. I I would suggest probably I love values. I love values-based living. I love the idea of a moral inventory. I think that potentially those quiet days could be the best time to do something like this. What I mean is just really think about what's important to you and then figure out how you're living your life based on that. And you could start the new year a very different version of yourself.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Maureen, I see your hand is up there. Do you want to unmute, or I can? Yeah, perfect. You're unmuted. Jump in,
Um,
Maureen.
yeah, no, God, this is going to be my first full year at home. So I'm say this will be my second Christmas in recovery. And last Christmas, I made sure I went away. I did something completely different that I never do. I actually went away for Christmas. So I was kept busy with kids and friends and stuff that I'd been with over in England. But this year it's going to be completely different because I'm back at home. And the last few years before that, I would have literally been just like you were saying there, on the phone, in the room, but just on the phone. So I wouldn't have actually been present. So I was kind of freaking out a little bit, going, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" Although I'm so looking forward to the Christmas break. I was kind of worried, like, what am I going to fill my time with? So I've literally made a list of stuff that I want to get done in the 9 days that I have between when I finish work and when I go back to work. So it includes like crochet projects. It includes like just certain stuff out around the house, doing stuff that I wanted to do all year but didn't get around. So I physically have made a list for something to do for every day of the Christmas period. So I get my little rest in between, but literally I have a project for myself for every day that I'm off over the whole Christmas period. And I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but I'm hoping it will. But it's just to keep me busy to a certain extent over the break while I'm trying to get like a recoup rest as well. So I definitely hear what you're actually saying there. Like those few days off in between is just, I don't know. I'm hoping it's not going to mess with my head, but like I said, I'm trying to put stuff in place there that will keep me busy, keep me occupied, and away from my phone.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, Maureen. I mean, like I think Tony spoke about it before, a client he was working with years ago that he literally would have his days scheduled down to like to the very last minute, knowing what he was going to be doing and when over the course of the day, and even to block off time. I'm going to read a book for an hour, or I'm going to take a walk for an hour, I'm going to meditate for 15 minutes, whatever the thing is, and just break it into chunks and break down the day and have projects and have things to do around the place because that little bit of preparation and planning that could take like 10, 15 minutes planning what your day or days are going to look like could save you a lot of heartache down the line. Like, so that's a really good suggestion. Claire, did you have any thoughts there?
Wherever that guy is, I want him to be my life coach. I love the idea of that, right? I have to be honest, I can't do it because I have two little monsters that will not let that happen. But I think you can do at least a general one, and you can have something that you can do each day. I mean, for me, it might look different in that I'd take the kids away for a day, or something like that. But no, I love that idea. And I think if you can stick to it, Maureen, that is going to be brilliant. And I like that what you've recognized, right? Last year I just took myself away, put myself in a completely different environment, and that worked. This year you know it's going to be different and you're planning for that. Like it's fantastic.
And like I said, hopefully it will work. I'll let you know in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like it definitely improves your chances. Like, I mean, none of us can guarantee anything, but like all we can do is try and set up our day and set up our environment and set up our routine to give ourselves the best chance, to give ourselves the best shot at recovery. Um, yeah, and that's a really, really good way to do it because when you start drifting, like I see it all the time in my own life, see it with clients all the time, big pockets of time they haven't planned for, the mind starts wandering, bad ideas start germinating about what will I do with this spare time. And then, of course, the old habits are going to pop into your head and go, well, maybe I could do this, this, and this, and that'd kill a few hours. That would kind of give me a lift if I'm bored or restless or irritable or discontent or all those different things. So cutting down on that as much as possible is important. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other factor is it was as well that I used to get my Christmas bonus. I'm sure there's loads of people out there. That's the other factor was, a lot of people get their big bonuses at Christmas. And last year I that's what I used the money for. Like I went away, I made sure I had it all in cash that I couldn't obviously I was gonna it was the first year in about 4 or 5 years that I'd actually spent it on myself. So then this year now it's the next thing. That's the other thing. It's like, making sure that my Christmas bonus when I get it, that it's taken out and it's put into savings for myself. So that's the other, I suppose, factor that other people will be seeing as well as, oh God, I'm going to be getting a big bonus now for Christmas. What am I going to do? But it's to have that plan again in place to say, right, as soon as it lands, this is what I'm going to do. I don't want to have access to that a large amount of money because if I do have a bad hour or two and then I decide to do something stupid or wrong, it's not physically going to be there for me. So again, this year being at home, the money, like I won't have to use it on flights or holidays or anything like that. So my plan is as soon as it lands, it's coming out and I won't get to touch it then. But like I said, there'll be other people out there probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good strategy because lump sums are a massive trigger for people. I mean, back in my misspent youth, people who don't regularly listen to the podcast, gambling was never my thing. Drugs were my thing back in the day, and back in my youth when I was taking drugs and spent a lot of time on the dole back then, bumming around, and double Christmas payments. That was a bender straight off the bat. Right, that was going to be a bender, or you'd move into a new flat and you'd be waiting weeks until you got your rent allowance, and then you get your rent allowance payment in, but it was backdated to the time you moved into the flat. So you're getting a lump sum out of the blue after being broke for ages because you were paying your rent out of pocket leading up to that time. That was a guaranteed bender. Like, so all these things, what is it? Change in your financial circumstances, this kind of double bubble mindset where there's extra money coming in, big trigger for a lot of people. Some people will get it offside. Excuse me, they might put it in the credit union because the credit unions are more kind of old timey and it's harder to get the money out. So, a lot of them you still have to physically go down there to take the money out. Or people put them in a notice saver account, like a 7-day or a 30-day notice saver account to kind of keep it offside. Or for people who only ever gamble online, they might take it out in cash because they'd rather have it physically in cash than sitting on the bank account if they were people who only gamble online. There's a lot of people who only do that. But no, that's another great bit of planning as well. Like, so that the double payment is coming in. From your own lived experience, it's going to be a trigger, and just kind of getting it offside. Or some people, instead of saving it, they would spend it as quickly as possible. So they might fill up the tank with heating oil. The kind of big expensive once-off payments, spend it on, not on, well, spend on whatever you want to spend on, but ideally not on totally frivolous things. Important things are, when we're in the winter here in Ireland, home heating, whatever it is, other things that you can load up the freezer with meat or whatever the thing is that you need to do, that's going to get the money offside to kind of reduce that trigger, prevent that trigger.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm like that now though. When I get my wages, like I have to put money in my oil account straight away. I have to pay the rent straight away. These are all things I never did in my youth. Like I would never do things that made sense, of course. But now I'm like so structured. It's like these things have to be paid straight away. I've never had a Christmas bonus as such from anything, but I do understand that it can put pressure. What I would say, and I've thought about this a lot over the years, I'm 5.5 years in recovery. What I didn't do at the start of my recovery, and I look back and kind of wish a little bit that I had done, is get someone else to help me manage my money. So I did okay, like, but I think if I had have had that person that I could say, look, I've a bit of money coming in here. I'm afraid of what I might do with it. So can you help me with it? That's a hard thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Because you've spent so long managing your own money, and okay, you might not have spent it the right way because you're gambling all the time, but it was yours and you managed it. And it's a very hard thing to ask someone to come in and be 100% kind of open about what you've done with your money in the past, and how bad your finances look right now and all the debts you have. So it's a difficult thing to do, and I didn't really do that. And like I say, I have managed fine, but it probably would have been a lot easier if I'd had that person who could have helped me structure my money a little bit better. So I think for anyone who is a bit afraid of that, I would recommend doing it. And I know there's this idea like, oh, but I don't want anyone to know like what my money looks like or what I've done, or what is the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? Because if you don't tell them, it could manifest somewhere else down the line anyway. So it's better off being honest. It's not an easy ask of people, but it is good, sound advice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, not everybody has someone in their lives who they could trust to do that or that will be available to do it. And but for the people who do, quite often it's the partner, sometimes it's a parent or a sibling. Like it's really, really helpful because it's that accountability piece. Like we all behave in more kind of healthy pro-social ways when our behavior is being monitored. So if you look at something like Weight Watchers or whatever, if you know somebody's gonna stick you on I shouldn't be swearing, stick you on a weighing scale once a week in front of a room full of other people who are also there to lose weight, psychologically you are going to make different choices because you know that accountability thing is coming up next Tuesday, and you don't want to be the one in the room whose weight has plateaued or who has gone up in weight or whatever it is. So you have that accountability thing. It's called the monitoring effect in psychology. Like, so it goes a long way, even if the other person who's kind of helping you with your finances never intervenes in any way, shape, or form. They don't tell you what to do with your money. They don't make suggestions about what to do with your money. All they do is monitor your spending. In the back of your head, you're going to know, well, I'm going to get caught here. And, even if this other person doesn't give you a bollocking about it or isn't going to judge you about it, you're still less likely to do it because this monitoring effect, you don't want to bring the gambling back out into the open. People tend to kind of gamble in secret and like to keep it in secret. So when it's out in the open, you're less likely to do it. Now, some people that I've worked with over the years really need somebody in there micromanaging their money. Unfortunately, in the early stages, they're in very kind of chaotic place. They really need that stabilizing effect of, well, you're getting a tenner today to get your lunch. And that's it. And come back to me tomorrow when you need another tenner. That's not ideal. It's a difficult situation for both parties to be doing that. It can cause all sorts of conflict. Some people need that in the beginning. Most people don't, I would say. They just benefit more from just that bit of monitoring and having somebody in there. And like the other thing, just made me think of something that I've always found interesting. Like when I'm going on a slight tangent here, but bear with me. Right? So when you say to people, uh, let's say they only ever gamble in land-based venues, so physical betting shops, physical casinos, they might live in a small town where there's only one betting shop in the town, and that's the only place they ever go to. So if they self-excluded from that one betting shop, that would potentially help them a lot in their recovery because we're all creatures of habit. We all tend to go to the same place. And if it's a place that you walk past 10 times a day, but you're barred from it, well, you won't be going in. But if you're not barred from it, there's always that little voice in the back of the head saying, I should have stuck in here and do a quick bet. So what a lot of those people say is, oh no, I don't want to do that because then the people in the betting shop will know that I have a gambling problem, right? As if they don't already know, right?
Yeah, well, that's
As
the
if
point.
they don't already know that, right? Of course they know that. Of course, they work in betting shops. They know who has a gambling problem. They know who doesn't. They work in a casino. They know who has a gambling problem. They know who doesn't. Almost everybody in a casino has a gambling problem, by the way. Right? Not a lot of recreational gamblers in casinos. Also, your bank knows about your gambling problem, and lots of other the gambling companies, the online gambling companies that you deal with know about your gambling problem. Lots of people know about your gambling problem, even if your nearest and dearest don't know about your gambling problem, right? So it's already out there. Online, it feels more anonymous. And even in betting shops, I think people like to convince themselves that, well, I'm not as bad as that other guy over there. Therefore, the people behind the counter don't think I have a problem because he has a much bigger problem. Like, I mean, we can jump through all these kind of hoops in our head to kind of rationalize it and minimize it and make it okay. But yeah, no, that just jumped into my head there when you were talking about telling other
And
people.
it's a good point because, a lot of the time, like you say, it's small towns and we go in here habitually. We get to know the staff, and I'll be honest, like we see them as nearly friends. You know what I mean? They're people we interact with and talk to all of the time. I actually do remember I used to go into a Boyle Sports a lot of the time when I should have been at lectures and I wasn't, and I was in my like early 20s. And I've said this a lot, like I used to go into the bookies all the time and it never crossed my mind that I looked a little bit odd in there with all the owl lads and their papers and little pens and stuff like that. But I remember this guy who I got on really, really well. He was a really nice fella, used to work behind the counter, and he was just looked at me one day and he was like, what are you doing here? Like, At the time, it didn't even register with me, to be honest. I can look back at it now and go, Jesus Christ, I can see what he was, saying to me. But it didn't really kind of matter. But that's another thing. You've got these relationships with these staff. And I mean, look, people have to earn a living. They work and they do their best, and they're not trying to lure you in by being your friend. They're just doing their job, and you develop relationships with these people. Same in casinos. Um, so I was gonna say something there, I forget.
So I go, yeah, but look, yeah, look, I've had lots of clients over the years who either working at the time in betting shops or had previously worked in betting shops or casinos, other gambling venues, or worked in the online space. And yeah, they're in there just doing a job just like anybody else. And like I uh, worked as a bartender for a long time, on and off for about 12 years. Like the point I used to always make, which is it's kind of unfair, in the pubs, somebody's obviously had too much to drink. You say, sorry, mate, you've had too much to drink. I'm not serving you anymore today. I'll call you a cab, come back tomorrow. No harm, no foul. A lot of people were unhappy about that. Some people kind of took it on the chin and accepted it, or they went off to the pub next door and tried to get served where they probably didn't get served. But that's a visible thing. Like the body has a natural cutoff point with alcohol and other substances, right? Other drugs. So that becomes a visible thing after a period of time. You ingest enough alcohol and then your body starts going, blinking red lights on the dashboard, saying you start getting wobbly and you're slurring your speech and you start doing silly stuff. These are all the warning signs. So the body's natural cutoff point, or if you keep going, you'll overdose, which is another cutoff point of the body's way of telling you no more. Right? It's a natural safety valve on the body for alcohol and other substances. You don't have that with gambling. So the person in the betting shop might have just lost 1,000, and maybe they have 1,000 to lose. Right? Maybe €1,000 is nothing to them, or they might have just lost €50, and maybe that person does not have that €50 to lose. It was their last €50, and they're going to have to try and make it through the week with no money. The people behind the counter don't have that information. And the other thing is, if I cut off somebody from getting more alcohol when they've obviously had more than enough alcohol, I am literally doing them a favor, and I'm doing the other customers in the pub a favor, and I'm doing my employer a favor, and I'm doing the insurance company a favor because they're a walking, talking insurance liability. I'm doing
Yeah.
lots of people different favors there. But if I cut off somebody in a gambling venue, let's say they've lost half their wages or half their social welfare payment for the week, and I say, look, mate, would you not go home, take what money you have left, look after yourself, look after the family, come back next week. If I do that to them, yes, I'm doing them a favor, but it's likely that they will not perceive it that way, right? It's likely that they will perceive it as you've just taken half my wages off me, and now you're not going to give me the opportunity to win them back, you bastards. Right?
Yeah.
So, and again, they can go to the betting shop or the casino next door. They're not falling down drunk. The people in the gambling venue next door have no idea how much money they've lost in your shop or in your venue, and they go again, right? Whereas in the pub scenario, if they stagger off to the pub next door, they're still obviously too drunk to be served, right? So it's very difficult, I think, for staff in gambling venues to be like the barman. Like it's not a straight comparison if I'm being fair there. Or do you get what I'm saying?
It's no, it's not, and that makes complete sense. What I would say though that staff in betting offices can do and casinos is be kind and discreet.
Yeah.
And I say that because we've had a lot of people who will have very different experiences trying to self-exclude. And I've had a lot of people say, the staff were not discretionary when they were trying to do some kind of self-exclusion thing. And that seems to be more in land-based casinos rather than in the betting offices. But that is something that is really, if someone gets the courage up to go in and self-exclude from an establishment, you would expect, that they're treated with the best of respect, which they're not always. Now, again, I don't think there's anything kind of bad intent on staff. Sometimes they're just not trained and the right way to handle that. They could be new, they could be young, they mightn't understand the severity of
Mm.
the situation. Um, so that can happen too. But when people talk, like people always resist self-exclusion when it comes to land-based establishments. What I've kind of thought about this quite a lot, and do you know the whole Albert Ellis REBT concept where you have like this ABC? So you have like your activating event, your behavior, and your consequence. Now, this is something it took me years to understand in my life in general, right? But say if my friend is across the road and I wave at her and she doesn't see me or she looks right through me, I can go home and I can completely freak out about that and go, oh my God, what have I done? Blah, blah, blah. And I can become really stressed and, panic and worry like that I've done something to this person. I am going somewhere with this, by the
Yeah.
way. Or I can go home and go, God, she must have been really busy. She just didn't see me or she was in a hurry. And then I don't stress about it. You know what I mean? And that's the most likely scenario. It's the most rational way to think about something. This fear we have of going in and self-excluding from an establishment, once it's done, it's done. And if anyone's going to judge you for that, then they're not really people that you should have in your life anyway. You know what I mean? So this fear we have of being judged for doing something that's actually positive in our lives, I think it's hard for people to get around that, but who cares? You know what I mean? You've done something good for you. Who cares what people think? You know? I think it's hard for people to understand that, but eventually no one's gonna remember, you know? But you've took a massive positive step in your life.
Yeah, and look, I think a lot of the resistance to self-excluding in land-based venues, which is harder, obviously, than online, is the addiction talking, right? It's the addiction going, oh, no, you don't want to do that. Oh, it'll be embarrassing. Oh, they'll tell the neighbors, or oh, they'll tell all the other staff, or oh, they'll know that you have a gambling problem, or oh, like they could do all these things anyway, right? If they
Yeah.
because they know you have a gambling problem because they've eyes in their head and they see you in this gambling venue, and under GDPR, they wouldn't be allowed to go around telling your business around the town. But that never stopped anybody, right? Especially
Mm.
not in little old Ireland. So, all of these things could already be true before you go and do the self exclusion. I think a lot of the time it's the little addictive voice in the head saying, oh, no, don't do it because, and then you don't do it and you convince yourself, well, look, I'll use willpower. That might work, but I wouldn't be relying on willpower right, all day, every day. Because today you could have great willpower, tomorrow could be a totally different story. And the little addicted fella person in your head is just lying in wait, waiting for the day when the willpower is lower for whatever reasons, all the different curveballs that life can throw at you. And then it goes, oh, yeah, but you didn't exclude from Ladbrokes. And sure, I could just duck in there and do a quick bet and yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, everything you said, but I would just add on that sometimes it's just part of the addiction that is trying to convince us to not do the right thing, even though we know it's the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we
And we'll
finish,
use that.
sorry.
We'll use that excuse. One thing I do want to say though, recently I was working with someone who their only kind of gambling establishment they would gamble in was Boyle Sports. And I called them up to find out what the story was. And I just think this is a useful information to have. I said, look, if someone goes in and they self-exclude from your shop, like are they self-excluded from all the shops? And I was told that yes, they can tick for the entire country, that we have, security 24/7, looking at the cameras, checking all these things. And I actually thought that was really good information to have. So
Okay.
I just wanted to put that out there well, I can only say it about Boyle Sports because I inquired about that one, but I think it's good to know. So it could
Yeah.
just be that one interaction, but you're covered, at least
Yeah.
with Boyle Sports.
Yeah. I think it's relatively new from Boyles because previously it was a maximum 6 month and it was shop to shop. So that's good to see if they brought that change in. Paddy Powers have had multi shop
Yeah.
1 year self exclusion for quite a while, and you can post in the forum. It's on our homepage, problemgambling.ie. If you don't want to go into the shop, you can post it, and it's free post. So there you go. Beat that, Buzz Sports. Seeing as we're advertising gambling companies today and how good they are. No, we're
In a
not.
good way, a good way.
No, but when they do good things, fair,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's fair to say that. Okay, before we wind up today, any thoughts, any questions, any comments, Maureen, Alice? No,
Okay.
we can't have silence on the podcast. We'll just assume that's a no. Although it's not
Yeah,
live
no,
radio, so that's okay. We can have a little moment of silence.
it's all
Uh,
good.
okay, folks, well, we're doing another one of these. We're going to do 3 episodes in this pre-Christmas series, just kind of unpacking some ideas about how to prepare for Christmas, how triggering it can be for a lot of people, in fairness, not just with gambling. A lot of people relapse alcohol, other drugs over the Christmas period. So it can be a tricky time. Obviously, it can be a very enjoyable time as well. I'm not trying to knock Christmas, but it can be a tricky time for a lot of people, especially people in recovery. So another 2 more of these pre-Christmas episodes. As I said, we're recording these live on the app, and then they're going out onto all the various podcast platforms. If you live on the island of Ireland, so in the Republic of Ireland or in Northern Ireland, and you want to use the app, you can just go on to problemgambling.ie. All the details are on there on the homepage. We have the main part of the app, which is called the Stop Gambling app. You can have no human interaction. If you want, you can just get all your different content. It's kind of mostly cognitive behavioral therapy content that's kind of drip fed down to you over a 100-day period through the app. The app itself is on the Mighty Networks platform. So if somebody looks at your phone, all they'll see is the Mighty Networks app. There's no mention of gambling on the app itself. And for women who want to be in a women-only space, Claire is also running the Reclaim program within the app platform as well. So we can put you over on that space if you prefer. And we're seeing a lot of women using the app at the moment, much more than would normally seek help through the helpline or through the counseling service. So that's great. So that's it until next week, and we'll do it all again. All right. Thanks a million for listening in, folks. And
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Very, 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 very well in advance. All right.
Says
Take
you. I
care.
had my tree up weeks ago.
I went up yesterday. You're the winner. All right. Bye.